Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's events like this that remind us of our humanity.
John Horgan appoints a deputy premier as he undergoes surgery to remove a lump. Also, shipping containers split open all over BC's pristine coastline. Who will clean up the mess? And
so do you come and line up for the food donations quite often?
Most of the time, yes.
Why BC is seeing an increase in seniors using the food bank.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Premier John Horgan is heading to hospital. In a hastily called news conference just before noon today, the Premier revealed he has a growth in his throat. A biopsy is scheduled for tomorrow. Belle Puri is here live with more on this story. Belle, what is the Premier sharing about his health?
It's been a few weeks now since the Premier says he first noticed a lump in his neck. Since then, he's been in and out of hospital. It was when doctors were checking out that lump in his neck that they found the mass in his throat. Now, tomorrow, he's scheduled for a biopsy. That will determine if the growth is cancerous. Then treatment will follow accordingly.
The issue with respect to my neck is benign, but in the investigation of that initial concern of mine, another concern was discovered, and that's what we're dealing with tomorrow and we'll be dealing with going forward. But it is certainly treatable, as I've been told, and when we get information from the pathology tomorrow evening, we'll have a course of treatment, and certainly the public will be made aware of that.
The Premier was in good spirits. He was calm. He joked that he's worried the biopsy might have an impact on his ability to talk for a while, which he says will be of some comfort for his wife. It's not the first time the Premier has been in this type of situation. In 2008, he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. He had surgery and follow-up treatments and was declared cancer-free. And this time, he's confident he'll again make a full recovery. He expects to be back in the legislature next week.
Okay, Belle, what does this mean for government? How does it actually move forward with business if the Premier isn't there?
It's business as usual for now, with one adjustment. The Premier has now appointed a deputy premier. You may remember after last year's provincial election, he decided to leave that post empty. He says that's because he didn't think anyone could replace Carol James, who had been deputy premier for years before she left politics. But now, Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth has been appointed deputy premier.
He and I have been friends for more than 30 years. And so my first thoughts are obviously about his health, and I have to commend the way in which he's been public about that and telling people to, if they see something wrong that they're concerned about, to get themselves tested. But as he said, he expects to be back at work next week, and in my role it will be to assist him in any way that he needs.
Today's news certainly came as a shock to many people on both sides of the House. It's the type of situation where the daily vigorous debate is simply put aside. Interim Liberal leader Shirley Bond perhaps said it the best.
That these are the kinds of days where you set aside partisan politics. This is about people who care about one another. And on behalf of our entire caucus, all of my colleagues want to say to Premier Horgan and his family today that they will be in our thoughts and prayers, that we will be wishing for the best possible outcome.
Now, the Premier's news has also picked up some star attention. Horgan is the first to tell you that he's a self-proclaimed Star Trek nerd. So when he tweeted about his health challenge, he got a reply from one of his favorite starship captains. Kate Mulgrew, or Captain Catherine Janeway, saw it and she replied, "Wishing you a recovery that moves at warp speed." And yes, the Premier has seen it and is pretty happy about it. Now, before all of that happened, when he left the news conference about his diagnosis, the Premier said, "Events like this remind us of our humanity." And he finished with, "Live long and prosper, people."
Well, we wish him good luck in his surgery, Belle. Thank you. If you work with youth on a sports team, a music, a dance class, or any sort of structured program, you'll now have to be fully vaccinated. This applies to people 19 and older in any leadership role, including coaching, volunteering, and officiating for both indoor and outdoor sports and recreational classes. The public health mandate quietly came into effect Monday and took many by surprise, asking why they weren't told sooner.
It's challenging, especially when we didn't have advance warning that was coming and are being told that it's effective immediately. So there is a lot of scrambling going on to develop forms to collect this information. And we're hopeful and we will make it clear to parents that we need this information quickly. And it will affect potentially their kids' ability to play games on the weekend and train through the week.
Across all youth programs in the province, he says it will affect thousands of volunteers, many of them parents. There's been a slight rise in daily COVID cases today in BC. 758 people have tested positive since yesterday, causing BC's rolling average to rise again. 10 more people have died. Hospitalizations are up by 12, now at 434. There are 155 patients in intensive care. Well, the search is on for more than 100 containers that fell off a cargo ship near Victoria last week. As Lindsay Duncombe tells us, a handful of containers have washed ashore and even split open, though 2 carrying dangerous cargo are still missing.
Crashed against the pristine coastline, evidence that the fallout from the weekend's accident at sea isn't over. That cluster of boxes? Refrigerators spilled from a broken container. People walking along the beach took pictures of the appliances and a mess of other debris. Games, rubber boots, backpacks, and baby oil. The local member of parliament has been getting calls all day.
So we want to make sure that we identify where all of that debris is and we get things happening so that it gets cleaned up. It's very concerning for our region.
4 containers were found on the northwest coast of Vancouver Island, as far as Cape Scott, hundreds of kilometers north of the ship they fell from. That ship remains off the coast of Victoria as officials investigate. On Saturday, in the middle of high seas and whipping winds, a fire started on board, including 2 containers with hazardous material used in mining. Initially, the Coast Guard said 40 containers were lost, but in the end, that number was revised to 109. But images like this worry scientists.
Shoreline ecosystems are often much more vulnerable than those that are out in the open ocean because chemical contaminants can end up concentrated, and because we're in places where we see life that really doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet.
There's concern, too, from First Nations in the area.
This just is unacceptable. They should be, in their due diligence, have contacts for every single Nuu-chah-nulth nation.
The company that owns the ship has hired a contractor for cleanup, but groups that clean up the shore annually expect they will be the ones to collect debris.
So there is container debris that ends up on our coast quite regularly. And so it's spilled like this, like 109 containers. We could be cleaning up this debris for many years.
Anyone coming in contact with the containers or their contents is advised not to touch it and to call the Coast Guard. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
A former Surrey teacher who killed his pregnant wife 15 years ago has been granted unescorted temporary absences. Mukhtar Pengali strangled his wife Manjeet and burned her body. Dan Burrett joins us with more. Dan, why did the parole board make this decision?
Anita, the board says the 49-year-old former teacher will benefit from spending time with his immediate family away from prison and doing things like shopping and banking. But it notes he's still assessed as being at a high risk for violence against an intimate partner. In 2006, police found the body of 30-year-old Manjeet badly burned on a beach. She was 4 months pregnant. Days before, husband Mukhtar reported her missing on the way to a prenatal yoga class. He held a news conference tearfully begging for her to return. He was arrested in 2007. It emerged he strangled her at their home, took her body to the beach, and set it on fire. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 15 years. He's been banned from teaching for a quarter century, but in prison, he works as a tutor, helping offenders get a high school education. The board says Pengali has taken some degree of responsibility. A psychological assessment rated him as a low risk to reoffend during unescorted absences, but says he still represents a threat to any romantic partner, and his absences with his family will start at 24 hours, then gradually increase to about 3 days. As part of his release, he must avoid alcohol, drugs, and report any intimate relationships and friendships with women. He's not allowed to contact his daughter, who was 3 when he murdered her mother. He can't contact any of Manjeet's family either. The board notes the, quote, significant trauma and loss her family shared in victim impact statements. Anita.
Dan Burrett live tonight. Thanks, Dan. Well, the Pope has confirmed he will be visiting Canada and meeting with Indigenous leaders. Today, the Tk'emlúps to Secwepemc First Nation extended an invitation for him to visit Kamloops. But as the CBC's Michelle Gussoub reports, the nation is hoping for more than just a visit.
He's one of the most recognizable figures in the world, now personally invited to Kamloops by the Tk'emlúps to Secwepemc First Nation. Residential school survivors hopeful this visit could bring a long-awaited apology.
Once the Pope does that, that apology resonates around the world, which is why it's so important for survivors.
Survivors like Karen Joseph's father.
To feel worthless, to have no value, to have no purpose. And the school that I went to did that to me.
While the Pope wrote that the discovery of more than 200 unmarked graves in Kamloops was shocking, he stopped short of an apology.
There are a lot of legal and financial ramifications to issuing an apology, and the Roman Catholic Church is the only church that participated in the Indian residential school system across Canada that has neither issued an apology nor met the financial restitution that was awarded to survivors during the class action lawsuit.
Joseph says he doesn't see how the Vatican can evade liability when so much has been brought to light.
I know in the indoctrination I received in residential school growing up there, that the church boasted that they were one body in Christ, so to speak. And I don't see how they can detract from that perspective now.
The nation is also calling for the Vatican to release all church documents and take full responsibility for what happened at residential schools. But while a trip to Canada has been promised, no apology is guaranteed. Still, there's a sense of cautious optimism.
The fact that we're even talking about that apology is critical because it acknowledges the wrongness.
We want to tell the world, because the world will be watching when the Pope comes, and they're going to be measuring every word that he utters.
The Pope's visit is likely to occur in 2022. Until then, survivors will wait a little longer for the apology they hope to hear. Michelle Gussoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Another female soccer player is leveling sexual assault allegations against a former Whitecaps coach. This time, it's a different coach. The Guardian is reporting Hubert Busby Jr. made unwanted sexual advances while recruiting Mallory Enoch a decade ago. In an interview with the newspaper, Enoch says she was pressured to share a hotel room with the coach and invited alone on trips with him. She says she and other players informed the Whitecaps. The team investigated, she says, and shortly after Busby was quietly let go, players were instructed not to speak publicly. These new allegations come on the day another former Whitecaps coach, Bob Berarda, had his court appearance postponed. Berarda is charged with 9 sexual offenses related to the allegations of 4 former players. The Whitecaps have not commented. BC's Green Party is hoping to ban LGBT conversion practices province-wide. The proposed legislation would forbid any attempts to forcibly change another person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression.
Many conversion practices are targeted at young people and have devastating and lasting effects on their mental well-being. This bill would protect the LGBTQIA2S+ community from the harms of these false treatments and would penalize any person who might try to administer them.
The Greens introduced similar legislation in May of 2019, but it failed to reach second reading. At that time, it only applied to victims under the age of 19, but the legislation tabled today would include both adults and minors. The BC Ministry of Health has described conversion practices as unethical, abusive, and not supported by science. If this legislation does pass, BC would become the 6th province to make the ban. Well, backyard chicken coops are on the chopping block in Port Moody. City Council is considering the advice of conservation officers to ban the birds, who warn that a hen house can attract bears and other predators. While some municipalities like Vancouver and Maple Ridge allow backyard coops, wildlife advocates are reporting an increase in black bear encounters in the North Fraser area. This has ruffled the feathers of coop keepers in the Tri-Cities, who say raising their own fowl cuts the cost of rising food prices. Others say the noise from squawking hens is a nuisance. Food banks across the Lower Mainland are seeing a surge in demand, and they're not alone. Across Canada, more people are using the service than ever before. And as Janella Hamilton reports, many of those new visitors are seniors.
25% of our clients are children, and about 17 to 20% are seniors.
A shocking statistic that Greater Vancouver Food Bank COO Cynthia Bolter says is expected to climb even higher now that CERB is no longer being distributed.
67% of our seniors are single. So that's kind of a double whammy. People living alone, they're older. Some are retired professionals, which is sad to see that they need a food bank, but we developed a seniors program this year, really just to address that easy to eat, nutritious food, easy to prepare, because we know that's a demographic that can really suffer from poor nutrition.
Fred Telaire is a senior living in Vancouver. He says he relies on food donations as most of his paycheck goes to rent.
It is easy to find a food because people donated food most of the time.
The Heart Tattoo Society is hoping to help Vancouver's most vulnerable. They began handing out meals in the downtown east side at the beginning of the pandemic. A Need Food Program Managing Director Evan Reek says has grown rapidly.
Started with, only like 100, 200 meals a week. Now we're at 1,000. We're facilitating another 1,900. And our donation capacity has greatly expanded. So it's grown so quickly because the need is so high.
Harley Frank has been living in and out of shelters for the past 3 years. He is currently staying in a shelter in New West. He spends his days traveling around the Metro Vancouver area searching for food and warmth.
If you don't have enough money, very hard. But down here, there's so many resources. People shouldn't go hungry, right? If you go and put the legwork in.
Both the Greater Vancouver Food Bank and the Heart Tattoo Society have seen a drastic increase in demand for food since the pandemic began, especially among the elderly. Twice a week, the Heart Tattoo Society hosts a barbecue where they give out 300 to 400 hot meals to people of all ages.
This month so far, from October 1st to today, we have brought in and distributed 4,800 kilograms of produce, meat, dairy, bread, all that sort, but still not enough.
The newly released Canada Food Bank Hunger Report says in March of 2021, Canadians made 1.3 million visits to food banks. That's a 20% increase compared to March of 2019, which is the sharpest rise since the 2008 economic recession. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
2 people have been charged in Delta after parents found cannabis edibles amid their children's Halloween treats last year. Police say the candy, packaged with distinctive cartoon-style logo, had been discovered in the trick-or-treat bags of 2 children. At first, police say they couldn't pinpoint where the suspects lived, but after finding similar packaging, police swooped in on a North Delta home where they found a lab packaging cannabis for illegal sale. They seized thousands in edibles along with equipment. The suspects face 3 charges, including possession for the purpose of distribution. Well, there's no denying the Netflix hit Squid Games has taken the world by storm. Well, one Vancouver restaurant is using the show as inspiration for a Korean-themed experience. Diners play the children's games seen on the show while at dinner. But as our Brittany Roffel shows us, the stakes aren't nearly as high. And if you've watched the show, you know just what that means.
This restaurant is turning up the heat with a Squid Game-themed menu for Halloween. Between courses featuring traditional and modern Korean dishes, guests will play children's games featured in the hit Netflix show. There's Popgi, where players try to cut out a shape from a hard piece of Dalgona candy. There's Ganbu, where players try to guess how many marbles their opponent is holding.
I reached it all.
And Dakji, where players try to flip their opponent's tiles by slamming them on the ground. The night will be orchestrated by the restaurant's head chef in costume as the show's mysterious villain.
My name is Han Seung-min, and I'm a Korean Canadian first generation and the chef at Sayu. Squid Game, yeah, that's the big thing. That's the big games during the lunchtime or after school. We need a lot of people to play. We play all day and until dark or until like we were so exhausted. After night shift with our staff, and one of our staff said, oh, why don't we have a Squid Game costume for the Halloween? Then, oh, that's a good idea. Then what about we bring some Korean dishes for a Squid Game night? Then also we bring another idea, then, oh, well, what about we let the customers have some experience for the games in Squid Games?
Chef Han says it's more than just a Halloween party. The food and games are a celebration of his Korean heritage.
Like 15 years ago, I couldn't imagine Korean culture like this big things become, but now it's happening. Everything's not, right now it's become so popular. Like young generation, they're really crazy about the music and those stuff. And also I can see there's a lot of demand for Vancouver people who craving for Korean food too. As a Korean, I'm really happy about it to see this, and I'm still looking forward to seeing the things getting bigger and bigger.
While the games won't kill you, that doesn't mean they're not competitive. Each night, a prize will be given to the guest who can beat Chef Han at Dakji. Brittany Roffles, CBC News, Vancouver.
I would head on over to Saiwu to play that, but I haven't seen the show. Have you?
I have, and for anyone else who's seen it, you know I would have picked the umbrella shape and be done for. So, yeah, I am definitely interested in the games and the food. That looks delicious. It's the kind of night where you think you want to cuddle up with some good food, but the atmospheric river, Anita, is quickly dissipating. Check out the radar. I already see clearing behind the front. Check this out, the last radar frame. There we go. It's happening. The great clear out behind about 36 hours of rain. And notice that rainfall warning is not for all of Metro Vancouver. So downtown, Delta, Richmond, not included. It's really north and eastern sections, and then the greater Victoria area under the rainfall warning. You mentioned yesterday this atmospheric river coming in sort of straight from a south-southwest direction, avoiding the rain shadow, but really pummeling the Fraser Valley and Victoria. Notice those red warnings still in place as well for the mountain passes, 10 to 20 centimeters of snow today. So we are looking at winter driving conditions for another day. But as we get through the forecast, clearing skies, these rainfall warnings will likely drop through the overnight, and we will be left with, believe it or not, blue skies. Anita, we just have to get through a couple more hours of lingering showers, but believe it or not, the rain that we're experiencing right now will be but a distant memory, and I'll tell you what that means for Halloween, and if you have to try and waterproof your kid's costume, coming up.
Oh, I was going to say your coat, I feel like, is telling us a little bit about what the forecast is going to be long term. So we'll wait for that.
Yep. Well, as a sneak peek, I might not need the coat. Just saying.
I mean, the color. I'm talking about the color.
Oh, yes. You are good, Anita. Okay, we'll see if I reveal any more later.
Okay, thanks, Jo.
You're welcome.
A new public phone has been installed in Port Moody, but it's hooked up to nothing. It's a way for those who have lost loved ones to channel their grief. As Akshay Kulkarni spoke to one woman who uses the phone to connect with her brother who passed away last year.
In 2020, my little brother passed away of an overdose. I was spending the last year just really, really grieving. He didn't have a burial. He doesn't have a plaque. He was cremated, and I didn't really have anywhere to go to talk to him. Hey, Henry.
It's a phone hooked up to nothing. But picking up the handset is a way for Brooke Robichaud to speak to her brother Henry, who died of an overdose when he was 23.
I wish I could have you to hang out with the kids again. The first time I picked up the phone to talk to my brother was very uncomfortable and awkward. It's a new thing. I've never done anything like that before, but handing the phone to my daughter and just seeing her smile and saying, "Hi, Uncle Henry," and, you know, connecting with him and getting to keep his memory alive, I honestly was in tears.
The Phone of the Wind is tucked away in this healing garden at Pioneer Memorial Park. The people who set it up wanted to be an outlet for anyone needing to channel their grief.
Traditionally, if you look at hospitals and even hospices, like death and grief are kind of tucked behind closed doors, and they don't have to be.
The phone of the wind is one of the many ways that people can use to mourn, to externalize that grief from the inside, and to make it go public from the outside.
This phone is modeled after one in Japan, set up after the 2011 tsunami. The phone to nowhere in Port Moody is the first of its kind in Metro Vancouver, and it's already being used by many, trying to remember their loved ones lost. Nearly 5 British Columbians died every day from overdoses last year, and Robichaud says people who have lost others shouldn't be afraid to grieve publicly.
And it's such a cool idea. I've put it on my TikTok and my Instagram, and so many people have reached out just saying, I wish this was in my city, I wish this was in my country. We'll come here probably about once a week at least. We like to go play at the park across the street, so on the way we'll stop in and say hi to my brother and, just have that moment.
A moment so that she can always feel connected. Akshay Kulkarni, CBC News, Port Moody.
What's in a name? Well, for Facebook, it hopes it means changing the conversation after a lot of controversy. Why the company has rebranded itself Meta. Next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. A Winnipeg couple has found a letter in their mailbox that was sent 50 years ago. As Peggy Lamb reports, they've been able to track down the rightful owner with the help of the internet.
When Scarlett Fonseca checked her mail last week, she knew she found something extraordinary. Fonseca got a letter that says return to sender, but she and her fiancé haven't sent anything.
The stamp on there was stamped, dated on 1971. So that's when I knew that this letter had been lost in the mail somewhere for almost 50 years in November now.
The letter also had an apology note from Canada Post, which says it was stuck in an old processing machine until now. Fonseca told her fiancé about it, and both of them got to work. They were on a mission to find out who sent the letter and who was meant to receive it.
Scarlett and I, we were doing research at the same time, and every time she found something, I would say, oh yeah, I found that too.
They found an obituary of the man who mailed it, Malcolm McLeod. He passed away in Gimli in 2019 when he was 93 years old. Fonseca posted about the letter in a Winnipeg Facebook group, asking about the man's daughter, Karen Muller, who the 8-page letter was addressed to. And a day later, the couple received a call from Muller herself.
We started talking, and she's such a lovely lady. We had a very good, warm conversation.
I think, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Another angel tapping me on the shoulder.
Muller says her dad sent that letter when he was a traveling salesman. He wrote from Moose Jaw, but his home address was in Winnipeg, in the house where Fonseca and her fiancé lives now.
8 pages long. Not a lot of guys do that. So here's my dad in a motel room writing this letter. Maybe he was bored. We had no children at that time, so it was delightful that he was writing this to my husband and I.
So we're going to put it back.
The letter is now making its way to Ottawa.
Not through regular mail. Let's not try that again.
It will go via registered mail, and it should arrive at Muller's house in the next few days. Peggy Lamb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Facebook has been facing a torrent of negative scrutiny, so now it's trying for some positive attention. The company is changing its strategy and its name. Anita Bathe looks at what going Meta will mean.
It's not hard to get young people to tell you what they think about Facebook.
I feel like Facebook is kind of not for this generation anymore. I don't find a use for Facebook, I guess, because now there's like Snapchat and Instagram.
I like the video aspects of TikTok, honestly.
They're spending hours a day on phones, just not on Facebook. So as the company competes for younger users, it needs a new strategy.
From now on, we're going to be metaverse first, not Facebook first.
What does Mark Zuckerberg mean by the metaverse?
What if you could be there with her?
Yeah. You're here! Today, he unveiled a plan for a time when users could meet friends for a concert or colleagues at work, all in a virtual environment.
The metaverse is a term that gets used by a lot of different people, and its meaning tends to change depending on what they're selling you.
That could involve physical products like VR headsets or digital products like virtual real estate. The company is hiring 10,000 people in Europe and is spending $10 billion to build out the metaverse. To reflect the big bet, Facebook will change its corporate name to Meta Platforms. But with the rebranding coming amid a series of negative stories about Facebook, some are skeptical.
This whole notion of Facebook renaming itself and calling it the metaverse, in my mind, is really a PR stunt.
And then there are still pressing questions about big tech and its role.
I think trust is going to be really, really critical. And the thing is also raising awareness so that people understand how and why they should trust you.
Are you coming?
Yeah.
Despite a new name and a new strategy, will Meta's claims to real change end up being just another virtual idea? Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Current and former players are rallying to support North Vancouver's Kyle Beach, a day after he revealed himself as the John Doe victim in the NHL's Chicago team's sexual abuse scandal. Karra Mccormack looks at what some of them are saying and what they want to see from the league.
Now a pro hockey player in Germany, Kyle Beach says he's overwhelmed by support. Tweeting today, he hopes his story promotes communication that will facilitate change. Former player Georges Laraque says he believes Beach would be treated differently today.
He was getting homophobic slur in the dressing room when he told people about this problem. And 10 years later, now people want accountability.
Beach was on Chicago's backup roster in 2010. He complained he was sexually harassed by video coach Brad Aldrich as the team prepared for the 2010 Stanley Cup final, which it won. To avoid distraction, management put off his complaints in violation of the team's own policies.
And it's destroyed me from the inside out.
This week, the Hawks general manager quit. The team's CEO apologized. The NHL is questioning former coach Joel Quenneville, now with Florida, and former assistant GM Kevin Cheveldayoff, now with Winnipeg, about what they knew and when. Their careers could also be on the line. The league, meanwhile, is pointing to new reporting protocols adopted last year, including a dedicated phone number.
We have a 1-800 number. Well, there's lots of 1-800 numbers out.
23 years ago, Sheldon Kennedy brought the issue of abuse in hockey to light. Problem was, and remains, he says, willingness to listen.
It happens with leadership. You don't make that change in policies and procedures.
Win a Stanley Cup, don't offend my boss, keep my job.
Coach assault victim and lawyer Greg Gilhooly says the key is getting past team-first mentalities.
Respect for the team and respect for the sport is not the most conducive environment for respect of the individual.
Laraque says the NHL is changing along with society.
We're in a different era today.
If that's so, this may not be the NHL's last scandal, but many hope it's the last to stay quiet. Karra Mccormack, CBC News, Winnipeg.
An organization already reeling under allegations, accused of more. The Whitecaps facing new accusations against yet another women's coach. We speak with a former player next.
Hi. Do you know what day it is? It's the day before Halloween.
And everyone in the square is going to be busy looking for dress-up clothes for tomorrow. But you know, I haven't seen anyone, not Music Man or Mr. Dress-Up. Wonder where they could be. Why don't you come in and take a look?
Nobody will know who I am, Halloween. Well, this is nice. Let's see. If I got everything now, it's so hard to see without my regular glasses on. Uh-oh. I forgot one important thing. Can't be wearing my shoes. Let's see. I guess these are the right kind of shoes for a lady. Hope they fit. No, that one fits. Oh! Oh! I don't know how ladies can stand up in shoes like this. But these high heels... Whoops! I keep falling off. They make a nice clopping sound, though. Halloween is coming soon. Pumpkin faces round as moon. Children dressed in funny clothes will visit all their friends. I love Halloween.
Bryce, how do you spend Halloween?
Well, I guess I spend it like most other parents in the United States. I stand by the door with a large sack full of jelly beans and candy ready to get rid of the kids by trick or treat.
Well, you're described as a very fine actor, yet you ham it up a lot in horror pictures.
Well, I don't think that's so bad. As a matter of fact, most of the horror pictures I've made have been based on the writings of one of the greatest American writers, Edgar Allan Poe. And they are, shall we say, baroque. I wouldn't quite say they were hammy.
Now that you're in Toronto, do you find anything particularly scary here?
In Toronto? Just the traffic. That's scary all over the world. Of course, I come from Los Angeles where we invented it, so I don't know why I should be scared by Toronto traffic, except there's something pretty frightening about that way in from the airport.
Well, you played in a lot of horror films. Does playing the role of a vampire or werewolf bother you in real life?
Well, not at all. I don't think that anybody else has shorter teeth than I do you? They're wearing them long this year.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. John Horgan has appointed Mike Farnworth as Deputy Premier. Horgan is undergoing biopsy surgery after discovering a lump in his throat. He says he's been told his condition is treatable and he's not stepping down as Premier.
It's a bit of an unknown. We're hopeful and optimistic that all, if not all, most of our parent volunteers are already vaccinated and are okay providing that information to us, but it's going to be news to them as well that they weren't expecting.
BC is now requiring coaches for indoor and outdoor youth sports, as well as dance and music instructors, to be fully vaccinated. Some soccer clubs in Metro Vancouver are now scrambling to abide by the new public health order that came down quietly a few days ago. A former Whitecaps women's team player is accusing a former head coach of the team of trying to solicit sex from her. Mallory Enoch told The Guardian that Hubert Busby Jr. made unwanted sexual advances while recruiting her in 2010 and 2011. Enoch says she was pressured to share a hotel room with the coach and invited alone with him on trips. The team investigated, she says, and shortly after, Busby was quietly let go. Players were instructed not to speak publicly. A sexual assault case is also working its way through the BC courts right now. That involves another coach tied to both the women's national team and the Whitecaps. and multiple allegations spanning 20 years. Karra Mccormack was an active player at the time and the first to come forward publicly to expose what she still sees as a larger pattern of abuse that meant players like her were silenced for years. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Karra, this pattern you're talking about isn't limited to women's soccer. We've seen it in gymnastics. We've seen it in hockey. How are all of these connected?
I think that there's just what I've noticed from being in this space for the last couple of years is that there's just a clear pattern where there's an athlete that's vulnerable and a coach that's a gatekeeper, and basically that coach abuses their power, assaults them. The athlete tries to come forward to the organization, and then basically the organization covers it up, and then the athlete has to go away and deal with the trauma of having to sit on that for the however many years to come forward again later. And so it's just it just repeats over and over again. And it seems to be, at least from what I can see, regardless of gender, sport, country, it's just this repeating thing over and over again.
And throughout all that, what is it like for a player to have their accusations ignored and to still see the coach working? It must take a big toll emotionally.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't realize until I was in the situation, but there's a massive amount of trauma. And I think, we talk with the whole situation that happened with the Blackhawks yesterday about how Kyle Beach referred to seeing his abuser carry on like nothing happened. And I think in our case, it was the same thing where we, knew our coaches in 2008 and 2011 had been fired for sexual misconduct, or that was part of the investigation. And, we watched them go back into the community unscathed while we sort of had to pick up the pieces and also had to carry the burden of knowing that they had full access to vulnerable athletes that didn't know the reasons behind their dismissal. So there's a lot of trauma in terms of being silenced and having to see perpetrators go on unscathed while athletes have to deal with the ramifications of it.
Absolutely. I can't imagine. And we've seen a number of athletes in different sports come forward. Why do you think that they're finding the courage now?
I think that just the climate's changed and it's become a safe space. And I think in the past, people would try to come forward and I don't think they would be taken seriously. And so I think, there's a lot of trauma when you're digging up past memories of something like this that's happened. And so I think it's just the climate's changed and people see that they're going to be taken seriously, that there is a chance of accountability, and the fact that, they are understanding that it's really important if we're going to change these patterns of abuse that people speak up and that it's a safe space now to do so.
Well, so you talk about speaking up, but are there other solutions to stop this from happening?
Yeah, it's really clear to me. I think athletes need to be educated and understand just what abuse is and how they should be treated. And then I think there's also, there needs to be a safe place to report when these things happen where, athletes know that the concern is going to be taken seriously and it's outside of the organization that they're reporting about. And then I think athletes need support when they come forward. I think that's a really crucial part of it. And then I really think it's like absolutely crucial that, there are organizations that have no skin in the game that are the ones that are investigating these things, because again, it's an opportunity for transparency and accountability and healing, really, if these things are investigated properly. So I think those 4 things are crucial.
Well, thank you, Karra Mccormack, for being on the show tonight and for your courage.
Thanks for having me.
It's billed as one of the planet's last chances to avoid catastrophic climate change. The goals for the COP26 gathering in Glasgow are next. At 6:42, a live look at South Burnaby tonight. Clear skies. So what's ahead? Well, Johanna is here to tell us next.
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change life? Don't miss 2050, Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, gets underway Sunday, and climate activists are hoping to put maximum pressure on world leaders who are attending. But as Chris Brown explains, even organizers are setting expectations low about what can be achieved in Scotland.
With the moment of reckoning at hand, climate activists are ramping up their now daily dire warnings that the world is going up in flames. Set afire, they claim, by timid promises by the likes of the host of the conference, the UK's Boris Johnson.
So with COP starting in 4 days now, it's absolutely important that we do as much as we can to make sure they understand the urgency.
This will be the 26th time world leaders have gathered to try to agree on how to stop human activity from warming the planet. But a prominent voice is acknowledging crucial disagreements remain.
Is all the world fully aligned with what science says we must do to avoid the worst consequences of the climate crisis? In 2 words, not yet.
India and Australia, for example, have balked on phasing out using coal. And China, the world's biggest polluter, has put forward an underwhelming plan to cut its emissions.
It is, of course, correct, Mr. Speaker, that COP26 is both unbelievably important for our planet, but also very difficult, and it's in the balance.
Ditching fossil fuels is happening, but too slowly, and hitting the crucial target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels appears remote. So the lead organizer of COP26 is suggesting a win would just be getting close.
We want to be able to say with credibility coming out of Glasgow that we have kept 1.5 within reach, 1.5 alive.
Still, there may be some surprises, especially once national delegations gather and feel the pressure to deliver, says Alex Scott, who advises the UK government on climate issues.
The real eureka moment that we're chasing is for a consensus agreement on acting faster in the 2020s. And what?
Right now.
Right now, exactly. Right now, before 2030.
That could mean agreement on issues such as green energy or preserving natural spaces. Not the essential deals needed, but maybe still enough to claim COP26 as a success. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
And meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is heading to Glasgow to that conference. Absolutely vital that we make decisions there. They're really going to affect everything in terms of our weather going forward.
You're right, Anita. Yeah, and as a meteorologist, I really see the impact of climate change on a day-to-day basis. So I'll be there on the ground for the second week, sort of unpacking the science behind the headlines, and I'll look forward to talking to you each night. Speaking of extreme weather, we've got rainfall warnings in place, as I mentioned earlier, but I actually want to show you the bigger picture across the South Coast because we're actually seeing the heaviest of the rain south of the border, widespread rainfall warnings for Washington, where they're getting record rain tonight, thanks to that atmospheric river that continues to bring rain to our neck of the woods as well. You can really see that narrow channel. It's only sort of 500 kilometers wide, with most of it hitting the Puget Sound, Victoria, and up through the Fraser, where we are seeing snow at higher elevations. Sort of snow levels around 1,600 meters tonight. Watch as I take you through the overnight, dissipating quite quickly. And in fact, by early morning hours, you may see some lingering dramatic cumulus on the North Shore through the first half of the day. Got to keep the slight risk of a morning shower. I think this model is just showing you the lingering instability. So the green, likely more cumulus. I think for the most part, Metro Vancouver is looking at a mix of sun and cloud for Friday and increasing sun as we head into the weekend. Yes, my yellow jacket earlier alluding to the gorgeous sunshine that we are due for this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I think most of Monday under the high pressure. It'll take another day to clear out for the interior. You've got showers for Kelowna through most of the day, Cranbrook showers for you as well after a rainy Thursday in your neck of the woods. And up towards Williams Lake, Prince George, the Peace, Fort Nelson, chilly start, -5 to -7 wind chills. You get back to these highs, lots of sunshine. Prince Rupert, look for sunshine in your afternoon forecast as well. And clearing out quite nicely, even for the north coast of Port Hardy. Victoria, some lingering showers again to start your day, but I think we'll see that sunshine nice and early. Watch as that atmospheric river drops quite quickly That's the green, taking you through Friday, and in its place, here's the sunny icons through the weekend. So yes, that means no rain for trick-or-treaters Sunday night into Monday. You might have to bundle up a little bit. Temperatures will be chilly, maybe a little bit of a breeze, but Anita, always easier to add an extra layer than garbage bag the outfit, I think.
Yeah, no ponchos for sure.
Exactly.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A new report suggests emissions from Canada's forestry sector could be 18 times higher than officially reported. And Ayat Singh has more from these findings, which also say Canada may not fully understand the role trees play in fighting climate change.
Michael Polanyi says Canada is downplaying the impact of the forest industry on climate change.
We have very serious concerns with the portrayal of the forest sector and the logging industry as being low carbon or carbon neutral.
He's co-authored a report by a group of environmental organizations highlighting problems with how Canada calculates the carbon emissions from its forest industry. Canada, like other countries, only has to report net emissions from activity in managed forests. But the report says Canada's definition of managed forests is too broad. It includes areas with old-growth trees where there is no logging, and Canada is using the amount of carbon sucked in by those trees to offset the carbon released by the industry.
We think there's a 80 megaton understatement by the government right now of the emissions from the forestry sector.
That's equal to nearly 10% of Canada's total reported emissions. The forestry industry argues all international rules are being followed.
Just from someone who's been observing the evolution of IPCC reporting, the Canadian model around forest carbon is well regarded as one of the best, if not the best model globally.
There's real concern over Ottawa's flawed calculation, especially as governments set policies on logging of forests that are needed to absorb carbon. This forest scientist says the federal government also doesn't account for how much carbon is stored by trees underground.
What we found in general is that, that half of the carbon is below the surface. So, and that below carbon pool is not actually included in the models.
An important call to take another look at the environmental impacts and benefits of Canada's forest industry. Inayat Singh, CBC News, Toronto.
Why Smashing Pumpkins is the name of the game at the University of Prince Edward Island. It's next.
"31 Days of Halloween." It's basically a different makeup look for every day of October. I think the first look I did was Cruella de Vil. Cruella! So I did the old cartoon version and I painted my face to look like her face shape, and I had the wig and everything. I've done the other mother from Coraline. That was another 3-hour look. My favorite one has been Dobby. That took me 7 or 8 hours, I think. Okay, let's start this. I'm gonna turn myself into a Demogorgon from Stranger Things. It is probably a monster from your worst nightmares. It has 5, I guess I would call them, lips. They come out like this. They're full of teeth, and it's just a gray being with no eyes or anything, just a big, huge mouth. Really, I'm pretty sure their main purpose is just to eat people. Doing makeup has brought my motivation up a lot. On days I feel like a 0 brings me up to a 10. So October has been great for that. Not that long ago, well, it was probably about a year ago now, I got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. So I needed to find a way to cope with that, since you can't really take medication specifically for that. And makeup has been that outlet. So I sit down and I spend maybe 3 hours, maybe 7 hours painting my face, and that whole time I'm just relaxed and I'm calm and my mind's not going 1,200 miles a minute. I think about everything. Sometimes stupid stuff, sometimes big revelations about my life, what matters to me, what doesn't matter to me, what I need to cut out of my life, what I can keep into it. I think about everything. I'd really like to be on bigger film sets. I make my own short films now. I work on other short films, but I'd like to be on the big screen working the horror films. I want to be the one in charge of everything, creating the monster, designing it, and then bringing it to life and being like, yeah, okay, so this is the design, this is what we're doing, let's start. That's what I'd like to do. I want to be the boss. Every makeup I do on my social media, I usually, well, at least for October, post every single day on TikTok. So if you want to go follow me or you want to join a live while I'm painting my face and watch it in real time, you can find me at Geek and Gore on every platform.
Students at the University of PEI had the chance to get rid of some stress this week using baseball bats and pumpkins. The goal is to raise awareness about mental health issues and help students let off some steam in a healthy way. Here's a look.
So it's an event where people can come out and smash pumpkins in hopes of letting out their emotions and just adding to the conversation about mental health. The idea of the event is people write something stigmatizing about mental health that they're struggling with or something personal that they're struggling with, and they get to smash the pumpkin and then get the emotional benefits of the release. We had 50 pumpkins donated from Mackenzie Produce, which was amazing. A lot of people were writing specific classes or specific workloads that they were struggling with, or things like it's okay to not be okay, and mental health sayings that are really important to get out there into the community. It was really good to kind of get the benefits of my own event, and it was really fun. It's not something that you get to do every day, so to put yourself in a situation where you can just let loose and have fun, it was a great time.
I think I'm as into this as they are. I too would be happy writing COVID on one of those pumpkins. Well, that's it for CBC at 6 tonight. Dan is here at 11 o'clock after the National. Good night.